Hello, welcome to Fireside Chats. My name is Magla Pillay, and today we will be taking up the subject of incorruptibility on the show. This subject is of interest to us because all across the globe we see corruption on various levels. We would ask you, the viewer, to take a good look into your life and to ask yourself some essential questions around the subject of spirituality. Do you have any spirituality in your life in any way? How does your understanding of life impact on your consciousness? And what is your relationship with God? Are you happy and content with your relationship with God? Is there a balance between your inner and your outer world? To answer all of these questions on this subject, we will ask Sister Denise to share with us her wisdom and insight. Sister Denise, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And a very, very warm welcome to today's show. Incorruptibility. That is a very loaded term and a very interesting one because corruption is omnipresent in the world, is it not?
Yes, it certainly is.
And what then is your definition of incorruptibility?
There are two sides to corruption. One is the sexual corruption, and the other is the financial corruption. And the thing about corruption is that it is an incentive to cause a person to go against correct behavior, correct rules and regulations, correct judgment. So who gets corrupted is people who have influence, people whose decision makes a difference in many people's lives. So the people who are the targets of corruption are the law enforcement officers and agencies, politicians. Actually, what I did find is it's very rampant in the universities and any area actually where somebody needs something and somebody can decide to give it to them or not give it to them. And then from the sexual corruption side of things, if you want to get information out of someone or you want them to do something, you can influence them through sexual corruption because it makes the person come under your influence. So this is the thing. What influence do you want to be under is the influence of your conscience and the influence of God, the influence of, you can say, righteousness. And so corruption is when you want to bend that influence to your side.
So, Sister Denise, if somebody is corrupt, they choose to be that way, don't they? It's not something that happens by mistake. At some point you make a decision, and then another decision, and another decision, and then you become it. I mean, the expression by Shakespeare comes to mind, "Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive." So it becomes a web, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And I think what normally happens with people is someone comes along and unexpectedly offers them a bribe. And they, all of their scruples are in place, and they will say, no, no, no. And then the person will go away and come back again, you know. And it's really a matter of playing on someone's weaknesses, usually greed, you offering someone something that's too good to be true. And always it isn't true when it's too good to be true. That's why this phrase is there. And you get away with it, and maybe the first time you're worried about it, the second time you're not so worried about it, and afterwards it becomes just a normal thing. And you may be actually in an environment where if you're not corrupt, then the other thing will come along, and that is that you will be receiving threats, you see. And so the forces, the quantities of people who have an interest in things going according to their desires rather than according to, you can say, the correct way, is very, very strong. And so people who refuse to be corrupted, they pay a very heavy price insofar as their career is blocked. They may suffer different types of damage, but their conscience is clean, and I think eventually everything comes out in the wash. So if you do choose to not be corrupt, you're always going to be right with yourself.
What price does someone pay for being corrupt? Because I think part and parcel of corruption is that there's almost a feeling that we'll do it in such a way that we'll get away with it.
It's always like that.
Yes, and the feeling or the knowledge or the illusion rather that you're getting away with it is part and parcel of the thrill of corruption. So how does, what price does somebody pay, whether you're exposed or not?
I think one of the prices you pay is that you can never really have an honest relationship, because being corrupt means that you have been made dishonest. And so your relationship with your loved ones is going to be limited because you have to hide a whole part of yourself. And so therefore it's not so deep, it's not so intimate. So that's a price, you know, you cannot have the happiness of relationships. I think that corruption is something that's progressive, rather like any other addiction, and gradually it starts to take over your life, and you become a real slave to it, and people have such a hold over you that they can make you do things that you wouldn't otherwise do, but because you're susceptible to blackmail and this and that, and you can get killed, you're operating out of fear all the time. That is a heavy price.
And Sister Denise, you have a situation where you have somebody who's the victim of corruption. There's a perpetrator and also the victim. Or you could just be working in an environment where you're aware of the corruption and then you become, you're not part of it, but it's all around you. What does a person do in such a situation to protect themselves?
Well, I think that you have to be personally strong to be able to operate within that, and you have to, I suppose, you have to make yourself small so that you can continue to operate, but you're not as free as you would be if there weren't a corrupt environment. But the thing is, it's so total, it's so everywhere that I think you really need to make yourself spiritually very, very strong and very, very light and really be with God so that you can be protected, because otherwise it is becoming more and more difficult.
There are many who choose in their respective environments who are not corrupt to see corruption around them to expose it. In other words, to be a whistleblower. But whistleblowers pay a very heavy price, don't they?
That's right.
Is it ever worth it, being a whistleblower?
Well, it has to be worth it because a whistleblower is motivated by truth, is motivated by the awareness that, well, if I don't, then I'm part of the corruption. And so then that sin of corruption comes on your head if you're not a whistleblower. But as a whistleblower, you have to be very, very aware of what's going to happen to you. And what we've seen in whistleblowers recently, they are very extremely exposed to danger. Their life is in danger. They can be killed. Sometimes even, well, they're not believed. The forces against the whistleblower are strong, so the whistleblower has to be, very smart and have a lot of backup, probably a lot of money, so that they can actually, have something that has power over those who seek to squash the whistleblower. And so I think you have to be very smart to be a whistleblower successfully.
Sister Denise, what comes to mind is that there's more than one type of corruption. We're calling it by its external large term, and it's an umbrella under which many things fall. So you get overt corruption, and then you get covert corruption. It may not necessarily be easy to see or recognize, but one needs to be quite streetwise to recognize both of them, don't you?
Yes.
So how do you go about sussing out the environment where this is not actually your reality? You just encounter it into a new environment that you find yourself in.
I think you have to be personally very honest, because personal honesty causes your antenna that can detect corruption to see it very quickly. If you're not totally personally honest, you'll miss it, and then it's easier for it to grab a hold of you. So that is, I think, the most important thing. For a person who has high principles and who lives according to those principles are more important than any other thing, and then they will be able to survive in that atmosphere. But, people can get at you through your loved ones, and this is what is usually done. So, in a sense, somebody who's alone, who doesn't have anything that somebody can get at you through, but then do you want to live like that? It's a very difficult position in the world today now.
Yes, Denise, when one is faced with corruption, that word may not even enter into your mind as you're busy going about the deed. What happens is that you're offered something that has an appearance of being very attractive, money or a position or something or someone, and there's something to be gained out of it. What must one be on the inside to know that all that glitters is not gold?
Well, you have to not be greedy, because if you're greedy, that can get through to you. You say, oh yeah, that would be nice. And I think that part of your personal ethical policy has to be that I will not take anything from anyone and be beholden to them, because if you receive something, you accept something, you have to give something back for it, So I think it's very good to have a sense within yourself that, you give your money's worth. I mean, like for myself, even on the simplest level, I get invited to different places to speak, and I always make sure that the amount of time, energy, money, effort that people take to arrange programs and so on, I make sure that I give back so that the account is always at a zero, Okay. Or another thing is we're trustees, you see. So trustees, for example, Someone will want to make a donation to the spiritual organization. You're a trustee to receive that and carry it to the organization and not cream off any bits of it, because that is also corruption. You see. And so I think, you know, an attitude of renunciation, an attitude of simplicity is very helpful there, because then you are not tempted, you see.
Okay. So if one is corrupt, can you have a relationship with God? A real one?
You can have a superficial one, but I really don't think you can have a real one, because God is all about truth. God is all about cleanliness, purity, and you can't be pure and corrupt. That's completely incompatible. So if you want to have a deep relationship with God, it's understood that that involves purity on every level. So if you are corrupt, then it means you're not pure. Then it means that you know, you're distant from God, whether you like it or not. You have created a barrier.
So Denise, how does the law of karma come into effect as far as corruption is concerned? And what I'm thinking of specifically is corruption is very rarely between two people. There's an entire chain of events that are set in motion, and say that it started between A and B, and you are person W or X, but you stand to gain from it, and you also want a piece of the pie, as it were. Although you didn't initiate, but there's something to be gained, and you also hold out your hand and say, you know, everyone's taking, I also want a piece. Where, how does the sin spread itself out, and what is the law of karma, and how does it come into effect in such a scenario?
Well, if you hold your hand out, you're part of the problem. You're implicated, you see. And if you say, no, I don't want to have anything to do with it, anyway, you'll be excluded from the action. And so you have to accept that. But I think the law of karma is such that sooner or later the whole thing is going to get exposed. Somewhere along the line it will get exposed, because the nature of the law of karma is it moves in such a way that everything eventually gets clean, you see. Because any activity that puts a person into debt, into wrong, awakens the mechanism of the law of karma, and there has to be the exposing, the equalizing, and the finishing off of that debt. So I think that really knowing the law of karma is a very good incentive to keeping yourself very clean. The law of karma makes everything clean. That's very powerful. You want to expand on that a bit? Because I never saw it from that perspective. I always saw the law of karma as being payback. Yeah, well, you see, the law of karma is connected with the phenomenon of human suffering. When no human beings are violating the laws of karma, there is no human suffering, and you hardly even notice or pay attention to the laws of karma. So the payback is very important. As soon as you start to do something which is against the laws of karma, the machinery is activated, and it will operate until you get kind of ground up in it, you know, and that's where it hurts. Okay. So Denise, if somebody has been engaged in corrupt practices in the past and has done things that are against their own conscience, and there are very few who haven't had their fingers tainted, as it were, how does one come out of it? Can you walk away from it? I don't mean the karmic consequences. I mean the habit of greed,
or the habit of, taking under the table, all of those. Can you walk away from it?
I think it's fairly difficult, because once you start doing that, because as you mentioned, it's a big chain, there's a lot of people involved. So if you start saying, oh, well, I don't want to do this anymore, then what is said is they'll send the jackals after you, you see, and they will take you out. So because, it's criminal activity, so then you get into a criminal world where there becomes violence, extortion, slavery, all the dark underbelly of the human experience will drag you into itself. And you will find yourself in a lot of trouble with a lot of ugly people. And that is the thing. I think that another aspect of coming out of corrupt is, well, you have to come clean, you have to admit what you did, you have to repay, and then, of course, it's going to be very difficult because you will be losing face, your reputation will be in shreds, and to build yourself up again is quite a difficult thing. So that's a big disincentive to come clean.
Okay, but there is the odd person, somebody listening to you right now, who feels deeply inspired to transform, who has seen the error of his ways, and who's maybe committed some minor sins in the corruption department in the past. How does he redeem himself?
Well, if it's minor, of course, it's much easier to redeem yourself and say, oh, this is a mistake, I got caught up, I was naive, I was stupid, and you can get away with that and come back into the world of right action. But what will happen is you will also be admitting that I am a bit of a fool, and so you can be victimized by showing yourself to be actually manipulatable and weak and not so sharp. To navigate the world the way it is now and keep yourself clean requires you to be really sharp.
Okay, so Denise, what makes a human being incorruptible and totally not susceptible to that which the world offers? Because there's always a temptation at every point in your life.
Of course,
there's always a temptation. So what makes you? What keeps you within this orb?
Well, you have to have an absolute commitment to your spirituality, a commitment to God, a commitment to purity, and it has to be very conscious, very overt, and that is the purpose of your life, is to walk that narrow line, and then you can do it.
Okay, so it boils down to a matter of choice. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And you see, if that purity is the most important thing for you, then that is what you stand for, you see. So that's your choice.
The other thing I wanted to find out is, say that you have accepted something that you knew was corrupt and you were paid out, and then after that you had an attack of conscience. If you use the proceeds of your own corruption for charity, sincerely, for charity, because you've now seen the error of your ways, you can't actually give it back, but you pay it forward and you use it to build an orphanage. I'm using this as an example, that you use it for charity, you use it for good. Is that an act of redemption? Or if you donate it to a spiritual or religious institution, do you, if you use the money for good, do you offset the debt somehow?
Well, it's not quite so clean, because you're using that.
Is it blood money?
Well, the beneficiaries of that charity, you're saying, you carry my sin for me, You see, if somebody would say to me, okay, here's this money, and I'm going to give this for your organization, and it's a large amount, I would immediately question it and say, why are you giving this large amount? What's going on, you see? Because if it comes like that out of the blue, and it happened to me, and I questioned it, and I found out this is not clean, and I said, you keep your dirty money. I don't need it.
There aren't many like you, Sister Denise. On that note, I think we'll say goodbye to you. So your answer is no to my last question?
I think it's better to give it a no.
Okay. Okay, on that note, okay, I have to ask you one more thing. How does one clean up any sign of corruption within the soul through your relationship with God? How do you do it, and what do you do?
I think what you need to do is write down everything that's on your conscience and offer it to God with a commitment not to do it again, and to accept whatever has to come as payment, as it were. That is a good way.
Sure. Okay. That's a very powerful note on which to bring today's talk to an end. Yes, that last sentence by Sister Denise was quite an earful. The question that I'd like to leave you with, viewer, is do you have the courage to write down all that is plaguing your conscience and give it to God? Do you have such courage? Sister Denise has suggested that that's what you do in order to come clean with yourself and with God. So I suggest that you take some time to consider this and ask yourself the question, are you incorruptible? And if so, you place yourself in the category of a very few people in the world who can stand and openly accept God's gaze because you are clean on the inside. And if you are, congratulations to you. If you were not in the past, there is hope. You can redeem yourself because none of us are perfect. We have all erred in the past. And so you can come clean by your relationship with God. So, Sister Denise, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. And thank you, viewer, for joining us. Good day to you.